2020. I am joined today by my co-host, Tim Lantis in Hermosillo, Mexico, and Carlos Ponce just outside of Mexico City. We are recapping last week's shows. Hey, guys, welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, Julio. Hey, Kim.
We had two amazing guests last week. We started with Lori McBain.
Well, three. If you
No.
count a two guests on one show.
True, we did. We had two shows with three guests.
Mm-hmm.
Lori McCabe, who's the co-founder and partner of SMB Group, she was talking about rebooting your business for the future and why digital transformation is more important now than ever. We'll talk about that a little bit, what key things that we learned from that. And then we also had Shannon Becks and Russell Herzl, who are the co-founders of Ebooks, which is a book streaming company that has really cracked the code on quality screen time for kids. So we'll talk about that. That was a very interesting conversation and very enlightening. I think they got 2 new clients out of that call, at least. So, guys, what came up for you guys during the show? Let's tackle the reboot your business first. And we got 10 minutes to make this happen. Let's do it.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Kim, you want to take it first? So please, I got my Yeah, go ahead.
I think there might be a lag in our internet. Sorry, I'm not intentionally talking over you guys. Talking about Lori McCabe, I think I pronounced that correctly. I think her talk was really interesting. For me, there was a couple takeaways. I think just this idea of how digital transformation has always, in the last few years been very important. And then boom, with what's happening with COVID-19, it's even more important. And I thought it was really fun that she gave us a lot of ideas on her investigation of what small and medium-sized businesses have done and are doing, particularly now. And there was a couple really cool ideas. Like she mentioned on this idea of innovation, right? I think there was 2 things that businesses can do now. One was this idea of really implementing this working from home element and discovering new tools and solutions such as video conferencing, cloud, and all that type of stuff that can help with this. But then also this need for innovation. And she mentioned a couple businesses. I like this idea of some restaurants now working on this idea of touchless menus, right? Where customers can use their own cell phones to go through the menu rather than having to touch something that, however many hundreds of people have touched before. This idea of somebody inventing who had a drone business, and now what he's doing is figuring out how they can utilize drones and ultraviolet rays to sanitize large places like stadiums and stuff like that. So I think it's just really interesting, this idea of having to keep transforming that we've kind of talked about, week after week recently. But she had a quote here that I really liked, and that was this idea of moving from fear to focus. And that really stuck with me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the idea that digital transformation doesn't have to be about why it's been done predominantly in the past. One, it's been done to digitize things to reduce costs, right? To eliminate functions in terms of automation. And the other one, it's been about creating a better customer experience, which is more focused on the end user. But the idea of actually using digital transformation to accomplish things that are not humanly possible, I think that has greater application. Like this idea of using drone technology to disinfect a stadium. There's no way you can disinfect a stadium fast enough, or even just a ballroom or an event place, right, for kids. Where you have right now, we have a situation where you're allowed to go in to do something, and then you have to give time and they have to clean it out. For example, like the kids preschool, that's what they're going to do. They're going to have a group of kids go in, and then they're going to come out and they're going to spend an hour cleaning and disinfecting for another group to come in. I mean, that just takes a lot of time and energy, and there's technology to potentially speed that up. So I was encouraged by this idea of using digital transportation to improve how you deliver services and the quality and life of both the customer and the employees. It's not about replacing people as it is enhancing lives. The next thing we had was Shannon. Unless you have another comment, Carlos, I'm trying to keep us on track for our time today.
Yeah, that's okay.
Well, it's interesting, I think, because books that kind of fits in this idea of digital transformation, right? Their entire business model and what it is they do.
Yeah, what stood out for me was the fact that she decided to narrow down her view and her vision to take his company, to lead her company, to narrow down on the small business and small and medium-sized business, but mostly small businesses that can be on one side, it can be easier for them to adopt the technology changes and digital transformation. But then on the other hand, it's the challenge of, she mentioned, I do recall her we discussing that there might be some companies that are reluctant to actually adapt to the new trends in technology. So I'm kind of eager how things are going to be evolving in that direction. How smaller companies and medium-sized companies are going to actually embrace digital transformation in order to remain alive as a business, let alone thrive, but remain alive as well in this day and age. So that's what stood out for me in this conversation with Laurie.
Yeah, I mean, technology is always evolving, right? 15 years ago, we were talking about if you're not going to participate in social media, you're going to miss out channels of engagement, channels of marketing. The companies that didn't pay attention to that kind of had their lunch eaten by the smaller players who became big players. So that we've seen the proliferation on how that's impacted businesses. And similarly, with digital transformation, you can fight it, you can avoid it, but ultimately, you can't. It's like resistance is futile, right? According to you've got to assimilate with the board. Let's move on to books. I really like that company, and I like what they're doing in terms of improving how children consume digital on their phones or tablets in a way that's both entertaining and educational, which is always the big challenge, right? There's not a lack of entertaining options, but the educational options sometimes fail to deliver for all the different age groups. And one thing that stood out for me was their focus wasn't on age groups as it was on specific learning criteria or aptitude. So I thought that was important because sometimes, with 3 kids, I look at my 3-year-old, she's way more advanced at 3 than the other kids were when they were like 5, for example, right? In her critical thinking. So the stuff that would have worked for a 3-year-old 10 years ago doesn't work for her. I need to have access to more advanced things. And similarly, there's different paces that they're learning, even if one is older than the other. And I always found it limiting, this idea of like, well, here's the buckets of age groups that you can, get access to for learning or for games. But sometimes that doesn't fully cover the evolution of that child. What came up for you guys? I thought that stood out for me as like a really good, valuable thing that they're doing. What stood out for you guys?
Right. I think for me, first of all, let's back up. This idea of who Books is. It's videos mashed up with books to make books. And it's an online platform library, essentially. I think their focus was ages 2 to 8 or something of that sort, where children can read along. And it's really great. And there's a lot of content there. And I think for me, it was just refreshing to have this source where I could, in times right now where you have to kind of connect your kids and keep them safe and busy, well, you have to be addressing other things, but something that's educational, but also safe, right? Where it's like, I don't have to worry about, even if it's age appropriate content, sometimes in YouTube or other places you have ads going on and the ads themselves might not be age appropriate. So I really appreciated this idea that it's a truly safe space for my children, for their sake, and then for my peace of mind as well. And I liked how you said, how they curate their content and they kind of block it together in this idea of values more than, age groups or things like that. So if you as a family are discussing or wanting to work toward a certain thing, there's immediately content that you can kind of go there together. And I just really like that idea. But I think this idea of truly thinking about kids and their safety, which I think some companies miss that mark, right? They're thinking more about bottom line.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to balance for sure. Carlos, anything else before we wrap up?
No, actually, well, the only thing about books is Kim laid out also very nicely and mentioned it. It's about this feeling of being, how can I say this? Feeling safe, that you can actually leave your kids in front of a computer, and as we all know, we're all parents here of little ones, so it's very nice to have an option where you can actually sit them in the front of the screen for X amount of time without worrying what's going to happen, what they're going to be looking at, what they're going to be talking to. So that's refreshing, reassuring, and adds to the peace of mind that we so much need these days. So kudos to Ebooks for that.
Yeah. For those of you who missed the shows, you can check out Nearsoft, dojo.nearsoft.com. You'll find them. There's also information in the landing pages. If you want to connect with those founders about their business or their company, you can certainly do that. That wraps up our recap show for today. Carlos, what we got coming up this week? We have 2 more shows this week on Tuesday and Wednesday, or do we have 1 this week?
We have 2, Tulio. The information is in the process. I haven't received it all, but this is what I know. Tomorrow, we are going to be speaking with Laurie Ferrell, the CEO of Distribute Consulting, which is a company that specializes in empowering governments and businesses to distribute the benefits of remote work. And doesn't get any more relevant than that. As we all know, it's all about remote work. And again, that's Laura Ferrell tomorrow from Distribute Consulting. And then on Wednesday, as we mentioned this morning, Tulio, we have Jose Leal from Radicals. Again, unfortunately, I don't have the topic yet, but I encourage our guests, our viewers, to keep an eye on our website. It'll be all there soon. And so that's our 2 shows for this week.
I am certain Wednesday is going to be very interesting. I'm one of the co-founders of Radical Purpose. We're going to talk about how to create meaning, how to create sense of belonging and impact for people, which is all what we all really want. So that's going to be an interesting show. I'm looking forward to talking with Jose. Join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. and Wednesday at 1 p.m. And until then, stay safe.
Bye.
Thank you.